We now know the name of the father accused of shooting and killing a 4-year-old girl, his daughter, and then injuring her mother and 2-year-old sister on Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, so police tracked down and arrested Trudale Reed about 20 minutes after the shooting. News4Jax reporter.
And police say that's exactly what led up to this incident. So beforehand, investigators tell us that there was an argument that started outside the home. Reed fired multiple shots and then took off in an SUV, a stolen SUV, and then police eventually tracked him down. But we're taking a look at the charges this morning. We're just going to read this long list, okay? Reed is looking at second-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, shooting into an occupied dwelling, auto theft, aggravated fleeing and eluding, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. But this is not the first time that he's been to prison. According to court records, Reed was in there from 2016 to 2019 for robbery with a deadly weapon. But neighbors have been telling us about their accounts, just trying to give the depth of how heartbreaking this has been for the community.
Now, that heartbreaking case from last night is now part of a larger conversation as a new domestic violence law just took effect today here in Florida. The law strengthens penalties for repeat offenders. It also expands protections for victims, and it aims to better track abusers.
Heather, and investigators say in last night's case, there was a domestic history between the mom and dad of the children. Now, advocates say cases like this are exactly why new protections taking effect today matter, and they want victims out there to know they are not alone.
You need to picture this street first. Tracy Lynn Drive on Jacksonville's north side. Quiet. The kind of block where neighbors actually know each other. On June 30th, 2026, it looked like every other Tuesday. Nothing about that afternoon warned anyone what was coming. Then, just before 5 p.m., a neighbor heard something that still haunts them. It was not a pretty scene. It was bad. That's a real person, describing what they saw seconds after it happened. By the end of this video, you'll understand two things most reports never fully explained. First, why this man was anywhere near a gun when the law said he never should have touched one. Second, what happened inside this family in the months before the worst afternoon of their lives. 3 people were shot that day. A mother, her 2-year-old, her 4-year-old. Only 2 of them survived. If stories like this matter to you, the ones news cycles forget in a week, subscribe now, because you're going to want to see how this one ends. The shooter didn't run far. He didn't even try to hide who he was. And when you hear what he did in the minutes after, you'll understand why police caught him in under half an hour. But first, you need to know exactly who was standing on that porch, and why one of them should never have been holding a gun at all. Before you can understand what happened on that porch, you need to understand the man standing on it. His name was Trudale Reed Jr., 29 years old, father of both girls in that house. Here's what most people didn't know about him that day. Reed had already served prison time from 2016 to 2019 for armed robbery. That conviction made one thing legally certain: he was never allowed to own or carry a firearm again. Not once, not ever. But his record didn't stop there. He'd been arrested for domestic battery more than once. One case involved his own father, back in 2022. Another came just a year before the shooting. Both times, the charges got dropped. Prosecutors look at the nature of the crime, particularly if the victim wants it dropped. That's a former federal prosecutor explaining how cases like Reed's often disappear quietly. Now picture Brianna Johnson, 27, raising 2 little girls in that same house. Family members later said she'd survived domestic violence before and was trying to rebuild. She wasn't naive to danger, she'd lived through it. So here's what you're left with: a woman trying to heal, a man with a documented pattern of violence still living in that home, and a firearm that legally should never have existed in that house at all. This wasn't a warning sign, it was a stack of them, going back years, and every single one got dismissed. Every piece was already in place. What nobody could predict was how far it would go. Here's the timeline, minute by minute, exactly how police laid it out. 1. Just before 5 p.m., an argument breaks out between Reed and Brianna, outside the house, right on the porch. 2. Reed opens fire, multiple rounds. 3. 3 people go down: Brianna, Rhythm, and Harmony. 4. 4-year-old Harmony is pronounced dead at the scene. 5. Reed doesn't stay. He gets into a stolen SUV and flees, leaving his own children behind. Police arrived at 5:02 p.m., 2 minutes. That's how fast it went from an argument to a crime scene. The other 2 victims were transported to local hospitals where they are in life-threatening condition. That's the chief of investigations, describing what officers found when they walked up. Here's what still doesn't have an answer. What was the argument actually about? Police said only one person could answer that, and she was in surgery, fighting for her life. What do you think pushed this from an argument into a shooting in a matter of seconds? Tell us in the comments, because even investigators didn't have that answer yet. He didn't stay to see what he'd done, but the police were already closing in. Reed didn't get far. A tactical unit spotted the stolen SUV and blocked it within 25 minutes of the shooting. He was pulled out, treated for minor injuries, and taken into custody. Then came the charges: second-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, shooting into an occupied dwelling, auto theft, fleeing and eluding, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. At his first court appearance, the judge denied bond on every major count. You can count on those prosecutors looking to end up with a very serious and harsh sentence for him. That's the same prosecutor who explained how his past charges got dropped, now saying this one won't disappear quietly. Here's the detail that's hardest to sit with. Reed's 2 prior domestic battery cases were both dropped because the victims didn't want to move forward. That's not unusual. But it means the system had 2 earlier chances to intervene, and both times, it walked away. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe now, because what happens in the final chapter is the part most people never hear about. Reed is being held without bond. His next court date is set. But for one family, nothing about this is actually over. Should prosecutors be allowed to drop domestic violence charges just because a victim asks them to? Let us know what you think. The charges were filed. The cell door was locked. But for one family, nothing was actually over. Brianna and Rhythm survived. Both went through emergency surgery. Both are still recovering from injuries that never should have happened to them. The same day this shooting made headlines, a new Florida domestic violence law took effect. It increases penalties for repeat offenders and expands protections for victims trying to leave dangerous homes. It takes a lot of courage because of the tactics the perpetrator is using to keep them in fear. That's a domestic violence outreach director, explaining why leaving isn't as simple as it sounds from the outside. Here's what you're left with: a 4-year-old girl named Harmony, who never got a say in any of this. She was just a little girl, at her own house, on an ordinary Tuesday. Domestic violence doesn't stay contained between 2 people. It reaches every child in that house, every single time. And when a system keeps giving second and third chances to someone with a documented pattern of violence, the people who pay for it are usually the ones with the least power to protect themselves. Do you think the system failed this family before that Tuesday ever happened? Tell us why in the comments below. If you're in a dangerous situation right now, help exists. The Florida Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-500-1119. Reaching out is not weakness. It's the first step out. If this story affected you, subscribe now, and we'll bring you the update the moment Reed goes back to court. Harmony didn't get justice by living to see it, but her name is why this story needed to be told.